Thanks for joining us for Religious Hard Talk. I'm Ian Boyne. Today we have the electrifying Garveyite Stephen Golden as our guest. We're going to be talking about Garveyism and religion in general. Garvey's ideas were so broad, so comprehensive. They included very robust philosophical and theological ideas. We're going to explore some of those today on Religious Hard Talk. We thank you for your company. Stephen, it's good that we could get together for this chat. Your wife, Empress Golden, insisted that we'd have this discussion and say, boy, my husband has a lot of ideas on religion. We know that.
One champion.
She's your number one fan. That's great.
I'm just lucky she's not charging me an agent's fee. It's good to be here, though.
Yeah, it's great to be with you, Stephen. Stephen, there are young who would wonder, what's the relevance of Garveyism now? When you look at contemporary Jamaica, the kinds of issues that we face, how would you locate the relevance of Garvey to 21st century Jamaica?
You know, last week when we had the Marcus Garvey Symposium, at which we invited the Junior Minister of Education, I said then, as I believe now, that Garveyism has the solution for all our problems in this country.
For all our problems?
Political, social, economical. You have to understand Marcus Garvey advocated for a racial and cultural education. And I believe that one of the greatest deficits we have as a people comes from the fact that our education hasn't been racially and culturally aligned for us to maximize our full potential. So when I say it can fix all problems, when you have a Garveyistic concept of race first and protecting your race, then you're going to bring down criminality and violence in this country, which takes place majoritarily black on black. When you have a collective principle towards economic advancement for your race, then we're going to think differently about how we approach institutions like the IMF and how we maximize our own productivity as a people. When you study Marcus Garvey, who teaches you that let no religious scruples and political machinations divide us as a race and of people. And you have people talking about, me a PNP, so don't chat to me if you're a JLP or Ray. You won't have those situations. I think our failure to embrace Garvey's teachings when he expounded them and when we should have has kept us back. And so we want to put that on the front page, on the front burner right now. That's why we're advocating for Garveyism in the schools. And I guarantee you, if we accomplish that, you will begin to see the change within one generation.
This race-first concept, Stephen, is this a kind of promotion of ethnic chauvinism? Some would say, shouldn't we be pushing for a more universalistic principle, a principle which is more inclusive of all races, of all peoples? Aren't we at this point now in humanity's history when we should be emphasizing our similarities rather than differences? Isn't a big part of our problem now that we are emphasizing differences rather than similarities? How would you address that?
You know, that may work if you are a melting pot such as the United States. But when you're a country over 90% African descendant, when you have 85% of your wealth controlled within the hands of the racial minority, it speaks to the fact that coming out of slavery, the policies and principles we adopted coming up to independence and post-independence did not answer or did not rectify some of the imbalances that came out of a history of racial slavery and racial, not being included because of your race.
Exclusion.
And so even though I understand we live in a global world now where the only race people want to talk about is the human race,
yes,
it doesn't change the fact that we have not addressed those issues, and so they continue to linger in our society and they pop up their heads in the various sectors, as I said before, whether socially, economically, or otherwise. Remember, Marcus Garvey's philosophy is race first, not to the exclusion of other races, but to say that,
starting
listen,
with the particular and then move to the universal.
Yes, you know, you consider a baby when it's born sometimes. It cannot just enter the general population like that. It needs a period of incubation so that all the organs and everything is working right.
To be rooted.
Coming out of slavery, where was our incubation period? Where was our period of getting counseling and being adjusted for the wrongs that had been committed to us for half a millennia? It didn't happen. We were just thrown in the ocean to swim. And so the fact that, that we're drowning right now is because we need to stop and take the time to correct some of those measures and teach some of those lessons that should have been taught.
Yeah. Stephen, you studied philosophy formally at Johns Hopkins University. And you would know that in philosophy, certainly in traditional Western philosophy, there is the concept of truth with a capital T. And the emphasis is on attaining this universal truth, attaining a truth out there. With all of this emphasis on race and your explicit emphasis on race first, what does this do with our search for truth? What if truth in religion is outside of a black religion?
We're not going to be able to find that truth until we take off the blinds that have been placed on us, right? So even though it may come off that I may be advocating something akin to black supremacy, you have to understand I'm advocating it to a race that have been infected with white supremacy.
That's true.
So
but we wouldn't want to swap. We wouldn't want to swap one extreme
no,
for
and
the
you know,
other.
I had an uncle who said that you don't want to exchange one myth for the other. But remember, I am talking about a period of counseling, a period of balancing. The fact that we still suffer from white supremacy is indicated today. You speak to any school child, ask them if they're still teasing the darkest person in the class. They'll tell you that. Ask them if you're still saying things to each other like you're black-like. Ask the young ladies if they're still playing with white dollies and putting the towel on their head, which may lead later in years to bleaching and being ashamed of who we are. Ask your old grandmother why she don't swap the picture of the white Jesus for a black Jesus, and she might tell you that because that's blasphemous. All of that is indicative of self-hate. Self-hate is a symptom of suffering from racial supremacy under an alien culture. So what I am advocating for, again, goes back to that incubation period. You know, when you're not getting certain nutrients in the body, they have to be pumped in directly. It's not something you're going to eat every day after that. But until it brings your systems to balance, until we begin to see ourselves equally, until we begin to understand that there's nothing wrong in interpreting God through our own spectacles, until we achieve those things, then we will never be able to find a universal truth. Charity begins at home, as Garvey said. So to thine own self be true, and thou canst not be then false to any man.
But the Christians would say, Stephen, that they embrace a Jesus for all, a Jesus who created all the races, a Jesus who loves all the races equally, and that the message of Jesus is of this universal love, universal embrace, and that your message of a race first is a diversion. How would you respond to that?
Why are the images of Jesus predominantly European? Because our experience in the West is having been introduced to Christianity that by people who formerly used Christianity to enslave us.
Yes.
How do you justify saying that because Ham saw his father drunk and naked, the one black son or the father of the black race was cursed then to be servants for the rest of their life? How do you justify that? When Jesus was being hunted by King Herod, he went into Africa to hide.
Right. It must have looked like them.
So when we teach religion from a Garveyistic point of view, then we're going to use that as an indication that Jesus himself was an African. Now, if you tell me that that is not universal, to teach Africans to view Jesus as African, then I would ask you, why have Europeans been viewing Jesus as European and passing that on to other people? Why do we have images of Michelangelo's uncle, blonde hair and blue-eyed, with the halo around his head? And what does that do to the young child who you're introducing to Christianity, to teach him that his God and his Savior looks nothing like anybody in his family? That's where the superiority.
Vintage Stephen Golin, posing provocative questions. He has more provocative questions to pose to you when we come back from our first break on Religious Hard Talk.